All right. All right, let's call this Essex County, June 3rd, 2026, special call meeting of the Essex County Board of Supervisors, joint work session with the school board to order. You want to call yours to order, Jamie?
Yep. Calling the June 3rd, 2026 special call joint budget work session of the Essex County School Board and Essex County Board of Supervisors to order.
Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Take the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. April, will you do a roll call, please?
Chairman Akers.
Present.
Vice Chairman Gill.
Present.
Supervisor Hale.
Present.
Supervisor Henry.
Here.
Supervisor Magruder.
Here.
Thank you, gentlemen. You have quorum.
The clerk of the board will now do the roll call.
Ms. Gomes?
Here.
Mr. Gross?
Here.
Ms. Bundy?
Here.
Mr. Hunter?
Here.
Mrs. Young-White?
Here.
Both have quorums. Just some brief opening remarks. I know the school board has requested this meeting with our board, which we are glad to have, as we typically do each year, talking about some of the finances, some budget things, and other items that wish to be discussed here. Just want to remind everybody that, and I know our board feels this way, that we want to cooperate with the schools and for the betterment of our kids and our community, and that's always our ultimate end goal. We've all taken the same oath of office, both as a board of supervisors and a school board, with our duties and roles that we have, albeit a little bit different with who we ultimately serve and represent. But I'm happy to have these discussions here tonight. I know sometimes we'll get into difficult decisions, difficult discussions, and it's we're not always going to be on the same page. But as long as we can all agree to work together, I think we'll all be in a better place. So, with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Gomes, and from there we can get started.
Yes. Can everyone hear me? I'm not sure. if
Might have
this
to
is-
pull it. There you go.
Is it
the
working now?
green light on?
The green light's on.
Might have to pull a bit closer.
Okay. I'll move it. That better?
Yes.
Okay. I just have some opening remarks as well. Thank you, Chairman Akers, and thank you, members of the Board of Supervisors, for joining us this evening. On behalf of the school board, I appreciate the opportunity to come together for this work session. Our shared commitment to serving the citizens of our community is strengthened when we collaborate, communicate openly, and work together for common goals. We look forward to a productive discussion and appreciate your partnership in supporting the students, staff, and families of the school division.
Thank you. At your request of this meeting, I'm going to kind of let you all take the lead on this and have the floor and start these discussions, and then we can chime in where necessary. I know the first thing on our agenda is the school board's 26-27, the budget for the fiscal year 26-27. Unless you all seem to want to change any of these orders around, is everybody okay with the agenda as written? Do we want to talk about 25-26 first, or do we want to go right into 26-27? Any preference for you all as a school board or us as a board of supervisors? I'm indifferent. With that, I'll let you all take the lead.
We can start with year 26-27. Was everyone able to see a copy of that budget?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll admit I haven't had time to review it all, but we do have a copy of it, so. And just for the public's edification, there's no intent on this board taking any action on any items tonight. That's not the purpose of this. It's truly a work session to have discussions, so no actions on this board will be taking place.
No actions on this board will be
Thank you.
taken either.
Thank you.
So we did approve the 26-27 fiscal year budget at our last meeting on May 28th, as well as the pay scales and the capital improvement plan. So if you guys have any questions for us, we're happy to discuss.
I guess what I would like to see, I know we're not taking the actions tonight on this, but if we could get an overview of the budget, that would be helpful. I mean, just looking at numbers doesn't really mean much to us. I know one of the things we talked about with the optional programs was the justification for those programs, how it would be measured and tracked. As we look at things we found in the past, like with the K-3 primary class size reduction, if we're opting into that program, how are we going to track it? How are we going to monitor it? Is it budgeted in there to accommodate those things? I think all of those details are kind of what we as a board are going to need to have at some point. So if there's some overview that you all have of this, be happy to hear it.
Sure, yeah, I'll start with that. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll move the mic over a little bit. I did ask Ms. Rounds to share with you a hard copy of a document that is titled Budget Requests, Assurances, and Monitoring Plans. And this document does speak specifically to the areas that you just mentioned that there was a concern about before regarding how the optional programs that we're asking to take advantage of, how they will be tracked and monitored throughout the time that we will be taking advantage of those funds. And so each one of them are listed here. They, again, come right out of the VDOE calc tool as far as programs that the state is required to provide for us, and then those optional ones which are listed here. We have them listed in priority order, and just for the sake of the public that doesn't see them, I'll just say them out loud. The list of them, the at-risk add-on is a funding source that the state does afford for school divisions, and there's a required local match. The Virginia Preschool Initiative, which a lot of people hear as VPI, which is the program that addresses our youngest learners, our 3- and 4-year-old program, K-3 class size reduction program. Again, a required local match comes with that one as well if we take advantage of it. The program where if we have a certain number of licensed staff, we can keep our class sizes down to 18 to 1 is the number that we would need to keep it at in order to receive full funding. Partial funding that the VDOE does afford to school divisions, special education add-ons. And by each one of those, you see the numbers that the state is extending to us, again, if we are able to get the local match from our local partners. The infrastructure and operations, the compensation supplement incentive, technology VPSA, project graduation, and then there are some that the required local effort was not necessarily required, or you all haven't looked at that as far as in your budget just yet, but CTE programs, remedial summer school, Medicaid reimbursement, mentor teacher program, ISEAP program there, and teacher core program. So each one of them, you do see the dollar amounts. We did talk a lot about just what you mentioned and how important and appropriate it is that we are able to share with you how we intend to move on these, how we intend to ensure that the funding that is allotted is used appropriately, that it's used responsibly. And so we where we could find some data, we did provide that data. What we did find in some instances, and you'll note some of the phrasing in the yellow, we noted in some instances that some of the data wasn't as readily, historical data I'm speaking of, wasn't as readily available as what we might have hoped, but where there was data that was easy for us to retrieve, we did go and find some, and basically we have plans on how to monitor this better moving forward, so that there is no question about what the data says, what the historical perspective has been moving forward. So as you know, if all goes well, we will be returning the finance team back to the school division, and as well as the human resources. Those will be they'll play a big role in ensuring that we are monitoring, because there's training that's going to come from some of our financial partners to some of our staff on how to control spending limits and procedures for tracking and monitoring. In many places you'll see that. I'm trying not to read this stuff to you because certainly you can do that, but we are looking forward to having those officers back, because they will be a part of the monitoring team. You'll notice in bold under each one of these categories as well, there's a list of who will be responsible for providing the monitoring oversight in each one of these areas. And they all will provide updates as we go along. There are some, for example, the K-3 class size reduction is one that requires us to meet the eligibility by a certain deadline. And so, so that, they're not all like that, but, so when that deadline, our first thing is to start by hiring staff, making sure that they are licensed. But if we can begin to schedule them schedule students so that the class sizes are small, that's the goal there to start with. And we have to have licensed teachers. We have to have those class sizes down in order to take advantage of that. The deadline there is in December as far as when that has to occur for the funding to be available for us. We do understand that that means for you all appropriating those funds in advance, and so it's up to us to ensure that we meet the eligibility criteria for those programs, the K-3 class size reduction in particular. And so that's our charge. And then we do understand that, your concern has been that when that hasn't happened before, that there wasn't a mechanism for recouping those funds, I believe is what it amounts to. So with our finance team coming, we are absolutely going to be cooperative and collaborative on how to make it right if we don't by chance meet that particular criteria. But clearly, this is our goal, and to assign employees specifically to monitor these areas. We look forward to being successful in this regard. So feel free to review those. The graphs, I'll just mention the graphs on that second page of that document tied to the VPI program. What we have here is two graphs, one from fall 24, one from fall 25, and this is the young students. They take the VALS testing 3 times a year, so the average that you're looking at here, basically we're looking at the impact or the effectiveness of students being involved in the VPI program. So what you want to see is more blues, as time goes along. And so looking at our local funding, the second column, you'll see in fall 24, we had low to moderate risk. There were about 71% of those students who were involved in the program. There were 35 students involved in the program at that point. Last fall, fall 25, there were 33. And so, so you want to see, again, the blue, the low to moderate risk of students who are coming to us with challenges early on. The earlier we can intervene, the better. So just one graphic there. Again, the idea is for us to take advantage of these funds by ensuring that the right staffing is allowed, the resources are made available, and then again, monitoring the progress of our students to ensure that we're moving in the right direction.
So
Just an overview, and certainly, you or our board can chime in.
just a quick question. I'll just go back to the K-3 primary class size reduction, because that's the one that we didn't get fully funded for. We got partial funding because we didn't have we didn't have enough teachers per classroom size.
Yeah.
So in this budget that's proposed here, does that have the funding for the adequate teachers that are needed to support that program? Because if I recall, in some of your all's conversations and some of your meetings, it included the increases for pay scale, but didn't necessarily cover enough for including the appropriate amount of teachers to do that.
No, I believe we do have the appropriate number of teachers incorporated in for that to occur. No, I'm sorry. We are 3 short of the number of teachers that we need to have full funding at this point. 3 teachers short at the elementary in order to have the.
So does this budget reflect the additional of those 3 teachers?
It does not.
So
At this
then,
point.
so then we wouldn't make
So-
that based on this budget. We wouldn't make that. So my question would be, why would we budget it in for something that we know we can't make, even as this budget sits here today? And that would be my question amongst a lot of these programs, that, you know, we can't really substantiate it if we don't have the funding in there to support it.
Well, we don't have the funding there to, you know what, I don't want to misspeak. I need to take a look at this. I believe we did talk about that, and as I'm looking at the teacher salaries, for the TES, yes, so I'm sorry, I misspoke. We did incorporate that. That's why that number there is a little bit higher in the teacher salary. So it's going to be, at this point, up to us to hire the number of teachers, but it is budgeted for, so we're asking for the funding that would cover it.
So that line item for, I guess the line item for teachers that's inside the
In the budget,
EIS.
TES.
TS, sorry,
Yes.
would accommodate enough teachers to support the K-3 program, assuming that you could hire enough teachers.
Assume we can hire enough teachers, yes. What I'm trying to recall is if it gets us to the full funding or partial funding. I believe the $150,000 increase, I believe that gets us to the, I think that gets us to where we want to be, the full funding.
And I know the school board has looked at this. Is the school board, are you as a group comfortable with the substantiations of things that are listed on here at this point?
So my question,
Can you put the mic up, Jamie?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I know it's a little long.
I'm
We got some
gonna hold-
we got some handholds as well.
hold it. It wasn't.
It's not very loud.
Sorry, Butch is giving me
You said hold it right.
bad directions,
Hold it right.
right to my face. There we go.
On your chin.
So, if you look at TES teacher salaries for this year, and we don't have those 3 additional teachers that we need, we've spent 1.184, so almost 1.2. And then in the budget for this 26-27 fiscal year, it's 1.209. So it's, based on what we spent, we have not appropriated enough to hire 3 more teachers.
You're looking at current, is that right?
This is as of April. This was April, and what we spent.
Right.
We haven't projected, I think Mr. Akers is saying, we haven't projected out enough to cover if we're able to find 3
Yeah,
teachers.
that's what it looks like, looking at it on the surface, is that there's not enough projected in the line item for TES
Correct.
to hire enough teachers to get the full funding for the K-3 class size reduction.
And, you know, I don't want to speak out of turn either, but, you know, my curiosity would be, so if we had positions that were budgeted for in this number that Jamie just read, the first figure, right, from where we are currently, if there were positions that we haven't filled at TES, right? Because I don't know that, I'm sorry, I don't know if there are a couple that we haven't filled. Then the projected budget at 1.2 might allow for that if there's a couple of positions, but I don't know the answer to that, is what I'm saying. I would rather have it over planned for, right? And then if we don't have to come back and ask you guys to give us $150,000 or $200,000 to cover 3 positions. So maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but I'm kind of hearing what you're saying and thinking about, yeah, it would be better to have it, ask for it up front if we need it, because how are we going to get the program if we can't hire the teachers?
Right.
We don't have the money. So we're back to square one again. You know, we say we want to do this, we want the funds, but we don't have a plan for how we're going to finance the teachers if we able to find them.
And there might be, and I don't want to dive into a lot of detail, that's really not our job to do, but these are just, when we've seen penalties in the past, that's what raises the questions, are we gonna, what assurances are we gonna have we're not gonna be stuck with lesser funding than what we already appropriated before? So, not to get into a lot of detail with that, that was just one of the questions I had, because that's fresh on the mind, because that's one that we dealt with lately on there. The other that I had, that I was just noticing in here, because we have different things in the agendas tonight, both for your guys' agenda and ours, is that I noticed that the VPI that's budgeted in this proposed budget and approved is different than the budget action form that I know will be getting to us at our upcoming meeting. And so I'm curious to what that discrepancy is. Why is the budget action form have a higher VPI amount than what's currently budgeted in this proposed budget?
So the VPI, budget action form, I believe is a lower number.
It's higher. It's 300, just 350,000
Three-
roundabout.
three,
It's like
four.
290 something on in the proposed budget. I don't have the
So-
numbers right in front of me, but something like that.
So the total that the state was going to provide is the 209, right? And according to the calc tool. And then there would be 209 from you all if you funded it, correct?
Well, if that's the case, that's 418, so not,
I'm sorry, 145 of that, so we're required to allocate half of that 209 to VPI. The other half of that is in kind, so it's money that's already in the general budget for electricity and classrooms and custodians, that kind of thing. It's not specific to
Transportation
VPI.
stuff.
So that's why your budget form is the 345.
and talking about the proposed budget or the budget action form?
The budget action form, which was also what the application was. It's the 209 plus half of that, which is our part.
So they shouldn't match on the proposed budget, you're saying, because those get spread out in other places, or should they be matched?
The proposed budget should match with the
Okay,
budget action
that's,
form.
that's where I was getting at, so
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Didn't want to make sure I was losing my mind.
No.
It's 209 plus the 07.
And then, so I think there's some things to work out with this, and I don't want us to go down through every line item and look at all these. One of the things that I would recommend is having, maybe it's the chairs and vice chairs from the two organizations that get together and can kind of hammer out some of these things to get to a little more detail. I know you guys are still kind of working some things out, going through these and straightening them out, some inconsistencies, which I think needs to happen. And what I would like to see is, at a later point, have more of a full presentation that can kind of walk through the budget for us. The one final thing that I had, then I'll turn it over to any other board members who have any questions, is, categorically, I know that you had sent on the last page of that budget, it had, a couple of things are a little different than what we appropriated for funding as far as how it's laid out. In this, it's got instruction listed as Fund 01 and Fund 02. I'm not really familiar with the Fund 02, but that doesn't mean anything. Is that the grants? But, what we appropriated for funding, given the amounts are different because you're asking for about $4 million more, is it's only got instruction at 60%, whereas we allocate, or 65%, we allocated instruction at 73%. And it has administration, operation, transportation, and technology all increasing while decreasing the instruction. And I'm just curious the rationale behind some of that.
So one of the things I can share with you is, you also note that the administration line is a little higher. So there, what we did in the budget, there are 4 of our employees who service the entire school division. And so before, they were attached to, their salaries were like broken into thirds. One part of it was at JCIS, part of it was at TES, part of it was at the high school. And so we pulled those out, because I'm told that those can be challenging to just monitor that way. So we pulled them out and did not put them in a school, but put them under the school board office. So they still service a division, but for the sake of budgeting, and this is after consulting with our consultants, finance consultants, it was smarter to put them in a separate location from divided by thirds within the schools, the itinerants, folks, if you will. And so our math specialist, our social worker, our student advocate, our occupational therapist, as opposed to being, again, located at the schools, they're located at the school board office in the budget. So it looks like the administration is, the percentages are higher there. They actually are servicing the schools, and so when the annual school report comes around, they will have to be designated as instruction. So if you add those percentages of what they provide, again, they service the schools directly. And so they provide instruction. So when you add their percentages back into the instruction line, it does take that back up. Now, not quite to the, I'm imagining not quite to the 73 that you all had listed, but it's definitely higher than the 65 there. So
And what's
it's
the-
just one of the things there.
What's a little alarming about that is what was appropriated and approved for this fiscal year that we're in had instruction excluding grants at 67%, and the total of instruction now is at 65%, while we appropriated 73%. So I'd personally like to see a little bit more justification behind that as to why, and there may be a good reason for that. I don't know, that's not for me to say, but I have a little concern that we are lowering instruction and increasing these other funds. And that's just a concern that I have. I feel like that's going in the wrong direction from where we had intended to go.
So that's definitely not the case. We're not lowering instruction. But I hear what you're saying as far as it being able to express where it's located if we don't see it in that percentage, but we're not lowering instruction, I can tell you that, the percentages.
Board members, did you have any other questions or comments?
I have a few. I don't
Ronnie,
wanna
go ahead.
You're next.
Okay, all right. Thank you all for coming tonight and meeting. I'm gonna try to keep this at a high level, because we can really get into the weeds on a lot of these things. Your budget is 17 pages long, and that's not uncommon. You did provide this little overview here based on the categories that we had allocated. And I think what we've asked in the past was you've summarized your budget based on those categories, and those categories are instruction, administration, pupil transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology. And we appropriated our budget, and as everybody knows, we had no choice. We had to approve a budget earlier, and we understand it's a bare bones budget, because we took it off the website, the DOE website, to calculate the SOQ requirements. So I think this board fully understands that you may be coming back for supplemental appropriations, and that's okay with the documentation there. The only thing I would ask, again, at a high level, would be these individual categories that you put on this one pager, and you have, and to the chairman's comments about instruction being 65% appropriated, 67% last year, our budget was 73%. Even on the absolute numbers, it's lower than what we appropriated last year, while administration is up by $462,000. Now, to your point, it may not be apples to apples to last year's budget. I understand that, but that is a substantial increase in absolute dollars. I would like to see the source documentation behind those categories, instead of me trying to go through 17 pages to try to decipher what comprises that. If I could pull up, and this can be, pull up everything that filled the instruction category and everything that filled the administration category. I don't think I can do that now, separate it that way. You can tell me if I'm wrong. So we can see exactly what comprises those sum categories. That would be my ask. And I think we've asked for that in the past, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing is the add-ons that you had requested in this supplemental page. I added those up just now, and they come to $2.7 million roughly with the add-ons. Biggest one is at risk, then you got the VPI, and it goes on down from there. The increase, our budget appropriation was $12.4 million. You're requesting in the FY27 budget $17.7 million. It's about a $5 million increase, what you're asking. But this only adds up to 2.6. So where's the other 2.5 at that you're asking in this budget proposal? Again, at a high level. So, Dr. Jones, is any comments on that?
So, so the way I understand it is that what we're asking you for, and I invite my board members to chime in if you have information to share, but or even Ms. Nita, who's been working with our finances. The required local effort is what we're asking for, but that's in addition to providing the state funding. That, I think they go together, right? And so while the required local, what we're asking for doesn't add up completely to that, including the items that you haven't already indicated in your budget, adding those together will come to a higher number. Now, is it 5? I'm not sure, but I thought it was 4 at least million. But that's my understanding. Is you're looking at the
5.2 million.
required.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're looking at the required local effort plus the state funding.
So is this number on this document then, and I don't have the SOQ, I don't have the calc to up, but
Right.
is this number what's required as a local match, or is this the number from the state, or are they both combined? Because I think that is going to be the answer to the question.
That you're talking about on the assurances document there, that's the information from their required local effort.
But does that include the local match and the state funding, or is that?
No, it doesn't.
So which one does that, which one is this?
Just the required local.
So it's just the required local match and not the dollar amount coming from the state?
Correct.
Well, the total budget with state and federal monies with the child nutrition and all the titles there, I mean, it's 19.5. So the general fund revenues that you're requesting is 17.672. So that's the way I read it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm done.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions?
Couple. How often do you, the board, review their policy and procedures on spending? Have you reviewed these at all?
So this board is in the process of doing that.
Okay. Okay. Because it's a little bit hard with this, just getting this document today, so I'm gonna thoroughly study it. And I would love to know your thoughts after you do study the policies and procedures. Do these requests and what's bolded in here on these forms match up with your policy and procedures? Because I know in the past that policies and procedures have not been followed. And to the point where this county had to last year come up with, correct me if I'm wrong on the exact number, 1.6 million, 1.7? Okay? And I know, another question would be, I don't see it anywhere in the budget. I know there are going to be penalties that come up in this school budget. There is no line item in your budget right now to cover that. That scares me, okay? So whose responsibility are these penalties? Is that going to come back to this board for review, or does that come out of the school budget? That's my question to you. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that it's appropriate that the school board absorb those costs, the taxpayers, my constituents that are on Social Security, fixed incomes, working 2-3 jobs, and then I see a budget here that $1.9 million in administration? These people are yelling at me. What's going on? Why? How can this be? So I asked that question. How do you all feel about if penalties come up next year? Is that something you all can handle in your budget, or are you looking at us on this board to cover those expenses?
I'll let the board chime in on that, but I do have a question is, and just for my own knowledge, is it typical protocol that you would have a line in your budget specifically for penalties. I'm just not aware of that. That's something that I guess we could have had in it and asked for a certain dollar amount to be put in that line to cover it. I'm just not exactly sure, how that works.
I'll take a quick stab. It's not typical, but folks, your budget is atypical right now, okay? So we've
Sure,
got to
I'm
try
just-
something new here. We got to figure out something. So it's either got to be in our budget or it's got to be in your budget, because that money has to come from somewhere.
When
I've
there are
been on a lot of
penalties.
boards, and I'll give you a good example. When we do maintenance here, if you hold maintenance money year after year, put a little bit away into a maintenance pot, then when the air conditioning goes or something like that, you've got the money there. That's basically what I'm looking at. You can put that line item in there. There's no rule that says you can't put a line in there for penalties, costs that you plan on incurring. And we know these costs are coming.
I know
I just don't know how much. That's what scares me.
When we met back in September, maybe it was October, and had that joint meeting, I know we requested at that time that a line item for penalties was added in so we could track what that was.
That's right. Forgot that.
We did request that. I mean, it wasn't, and, because it was that same meeting that we said, your repayment plan, which I don't see that in here either, for these funds that were already paid and ones in the future to be paid to be paid back. We said we'd use like rental space and things like that to pay that back over whatever period of time it would take to do it. We don't want to burden the schools with it, but at the same time, we have an onus back to get that money back.
Yeah, I recall that conversation, and I know Ms. Gomes, you're trying to jump in here, but I do recall that. And I also recall that the folks we were working with was going to add this penalties line in, but I never saw it get added. But I do remember that now, that you were talking about, there being this line being added into the budget back
Yeah,
then.
that would be something that the board would have to, the school board would have to appropriate. We can't just add lines in, so you guys would have to approve that. But certainly in this budget going forward.
And it
this
was
budget-
approved.
The budget
It was
we're in
approved.
now, I mean, it's basically done, so, but moving forward, we probably should have something.
So, Dr. Jones, there is a penalties and interest line that's been added to this budget. It's in the board services section, but there's nothing appropriated in it. So it's there, but it's,
This year or
or last year.
there's
Yeah, this year or.
there's a placeholder like you
Right.
said. So that made it into the budget, no
But
funding.
nothing's been
No
appropriated.
prediction for what we need.
It's in the board services section.
I think, Ms. Waddy, did you have a comment? I know they might not always see, it's kind of a straight line, so it's kind of hard to see all the way down, so I'll try to cover the bases if I can.
Thank you. I'll raise my hand a little higher, but I wanted to add to that was one of my questions as well. At an earlier meeting, that we make sure that that's included and we know exactly where that's going to come from, or at least that we are going to be paying it back and how much have we paid back. So that was one of my questions as well. And I know that, Mr. Gill, you had some questions, maybe some statements about the assurances. So would it be advantageous of this board to add a little bit more sustenance to these assurances that at least gives current year data to support the number of students who are currently involved in these particular programs as they sit, so that we can then determine the appropriated funds for that. It may give a little bit more sustenance to the assurances to let you know we have 5 students involved in the at-risk program, and this is what the costs were, and things of that nature. Maybe it will add a little bit more weight to the justification. Would that be advantageous of this board to see that somewhat raw data with student identifying markers removed? So redacted, but at least it gives you hard numbers to understand where our trends have been, at least for this year, and what possible projections, because if you're looking at data trends, you might be able to possibly identify potential 1 to 2 or 3 students who could fall in that category based on what their data was for this year. Would that be something that would be appealing to the board?
You're talking to data junkies up here, so.
We're numbers. and
Yeah, so.
that's
Number
Yeah,
crunchers.
Data is a dangerous word. I think more, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that. But I think more importantly is kind of how we have the assurances that we're going to meet the programs. I'm going to assume, right, wrong, or indifferent, that all the programs that the Virginia Department of Education have put in the SOQ and the calc tool are important programs, and they have some effectiveness. Now, do they have different effectiveness in different school divisions and different areas? Maybe so. That's what you guys figure out, and whether what works in there or not. I think what we have to understand is, if we're gonna ask for this money, are we really gonna be able to do these things? Is it gonna make a difference? And is it worth using local tax dollars to support that program? And is it gonna get us the end result, meaning us, we all, the results that we're looking for the students? That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and making sure that the add-on information, the incentives here equal what your increase request is, which they don't right now.
Understandable. I would like to make another suggestion to the board, to my fellow colleagues, is if we are looking at these numbers, let's say for the Virginia Preschool Initiative, that maybe we spell out what that monitoring system looks like, so that we know by September 15th, we're looking at our date. By August, we're looking at our enrollment data. By September 15th, we're looking at enrollment data. By September 30th. So we will kind of maybe have a gauge of the projection, so we won't get to December and kind of say, well, we don't have it, we don't know where we are, here we are. So I would like to suggest that that may add another layer of justification and support for the Board of Supervisors. And that could be utilized for some other services as well, to support the rationale where we're looking at what type of instructional programs were used this year to support the funding, and what you plan to use next year based on VDOE recommended supported programs. So if you're looking for an at-risk intervention programs that is evidence-based, what did we use this year? What was the cost, and what's the projected cost? I think that may help with the assurances. I'm not gonna speak for you guys, but I think that would help me as well. And to your question, Mr. Magruder, I have shared the concerns about the budget, overspending the budget, and what the ramifications would be for the board. So I have shared those.
And I know, another item that I didn't see in, and there's a couple items that I know you guys are gonna discuss that's on the agenda, things like the E-rate funding, the school improvement grant. I didn't see those listed in here either, and if that's something that we know we get every year, why would we not include that in the budget? I'm assuming that's not part of the $1 million grants already, but it should be a line item if we're anticipating it. And we can talk about that a little bit if we want to, when we get the E-rate. I think that's some of the issues that's happened with that specifically, is that it didn't get, we knew about it in June of last year, we were getting this E-rate funding, but it wasn't put into the budget. Only thing that was put into the budget was a potential local match. And now the fundings came in, it came in because it had cost savings, which is great. Kudos for getting the Wi-Fi in cheaper, but that also meant a lower local match, which means that's not as much as the counties, the taxpayer has to put into it. But if that's budgeted up front, we already assume it. Even if it's a higher number, that's okay. Let's get it in the budget so we can track it and know what it is. So I think there's some pieces like that that really need to go in here. And it, from talking to some of you, and Jamie and I talk quite often, she's my representative, counterpart in Greater Tappahannock. It seems like, what was kind of approved was kind of that baseline number. No, we need to do stuff, but there might be some further shifting. And I'll go back to my previous comment that I think it would be good to have a subset group, instead of us trying to dive into details of these and have these big meetings, that can kind of hammer out some of those things and can kind of both take them back to our respective boards, say, here's kind of what we're thinking, here's what it would look like, and then we can come back together again. I don't know, board, are you in favor of that?
Why not?
And I don't know if the school board is in favor of that as well?
I'm in favor.
Okay.
Why not?
So I just,
That strengthens the relationship between the two boards, so we can have more of a collaborative mindset when we try to move forward.
I agree. John, I didn't mean to cut you off if you have additional
Doing a
questions.
good job, Chair. No problem.
Yeah, I thought he was finished.
I can roll with it, buddy.
I know you can.
I'm not a problem.
I know you can.
Did, Dr. Jones, did you propose any efficiencies or savings that would help cover the cost of the request that you're making before making this request to this board? I know you all have entered into an agreement for cost savings for energy efficiency. I've told my board that there is, I think, $1.5 million that we're gonna have to come up with, because that's part of the contract, the savings will come in, so that's another $1.5 million we have to come up with. So, so this is why I'm looking at this request for 2.5 million. I've got penalties coming, I've got this coming. What efficiencies, what savings has Dr. Jones presented to you all to help fund some of this? Because that can help meet these budget goals.
So there hasn't been a lot of savings. Where we have saved is where we have thought about not filling certain positions. And there's been some savings, but we are a small division. There are not a whole lot of positions that we can stand to lose or not fill. And so there is a line in here that has a small contingency at this point, very small. There were some positions that we didn't fill, but there was so some offset, some we had to fill. Right now, that contingency line is only about $16,000. So we don't have extra money really at this point in the budget of any significance.
But I think what Supervisor Magruder is saying, though, is not people, but there's other things. With these energy efficiency studies,
Sure.
that is gonna save more money over time than the $1.5 million that's gonna cost. That needs to be paid back with those savings, but those savings are gonna be more than that $1.5 million. And that's gonna equal out to something each year. Maybe it's $100,000, maybe it's $500,000. That's what you have to work with the engineers on what that means, but that should be tailored in here. And also, any kind of other operational savings should be built in. So I don't think John was necessarily asking about people costs, more as operational and overhead type costs.
Gotcha. Yeah, so that, the overhead kind of costs that you're talking about are not factored in beyond reducing some of the amounts of funding that we asked for previously or in previous years. In certain places, we looked at where some budgets were not really spent to their capacity, and we lowered the ask on some of those. Those were areas that we saved in, but it was offset because there were other areas that we had overspent basically. We needed to balance that out. So there's not a lot of identified at this point personnel savings identified within the budget.
I don't know. I caught her.
Thank you. So I did make some very broad suggestions to my fellow board members of some potential cost savings, but also one of the things that I wanted to share is that the budget was built on a suggestion of 1025 ADM, average daily membership. When we were talking about the calc tool, suggested 1040, so there would be some differences in that. We budgeted for a lower student enrollment with the hopes of having a higher student enrollment come August. So we're hoping that that will generate some additional funds for the division because we budgeted based on a lower average daily membership than where we were currently standing at the time that the budget was built.
In addition to that, the state has not approved their budget yet, and that's looking like it's gonna come in a little bit higher on the education side than originally proposed as well. So there could be some additional funding there once they approve the budget.
And Mr. Magruder, your questions are very, very pointed, and they're important to discuss. And I don't want to go through all of that, but I do hear you say, we need to look, and we have, I believe as a board, we have asked for that to happen. Where can we be tighter, more fiscally tight on things? Where can we, redistribute some things? One of the things I told the board when we started in January, I had gotten so tired over the last 4 or 5 years of hearing that BCPS is top heavy, BCPS is top heavy, right? So one of the questions I asked the people that we consulted with was to look at where we are as a division and determine exactly how top heavy we are, right? And I was surprised that what we were told was that it wasn't what we thought, how bad, we thought, I know Ms. Jones and I have had this conversation, and Charmaine and I have had it back and forth, right? But the actual, what they told us, and these are high-level people that have been doing this for, 50, 60 years between the two of them, that's not the case. But what I still said to Dr. Jones and I wasn't the only one. You know, how can we look at what we currently have structurally, organizationally? Is there a way to tighten things up or redistribute or look at, you know, not people but positions, and in those positions duties, and how to be more focused on that, right? Because that is we're charged with doing that, just like you guys are charged with control. You know, you've got to say, you've got to ask your question. Did we look to save money, right? Or did we just say, no, this is what it is, and this is what we gotta have, and you gotta give it to us? So, I will say that for me, as a big idea person who spent, you know, almost 4 decades in schools, I look at our organizational chart, and I believe there are some potential things that can be redistributed and done differently. But just because Butch Gross thinks that doesn't mean that the person who's running the school division, Dr. Jones, can make that happen. But I'm never gonna stop saying we have to look at that. And we have to look at it all the time. Because depending upon the personnel and the people you have and the talent of those people, you can always, without breaking somebody's back and overworking them to the point where they can't be successful, redistribute things and make sure you're tight with what you're doing, right? I don't ever wanna perceive that we're paying someone 6 figures and they don't have enough work to do, right? That does not look good on the street, and it never will. And I will never stand for that. But we've been on this board for less than, you know, we're in month 5. So, you know, 3 of us are brand new in month 5. And so, you know, I will say we learn as a board, at least I know I do, every day we learn something. You know, I've learned things tonight. I've taken 5 pages of notes, 4 or 5 pages of notes, right? Even though I had access to stuff. I mean, when I listen to you guys talk, I'm taking notes on what you're asking, right? Because it's important to understand why you ask your questions, so that we can try to broker some sort of understanding on our part and make sure we're giving you what you need, just like Charmaine said, right? That is our goal, and I can promise you that's my goal. I wouldn't be sitting here if that wasn't my goal, because I've seen it work the opposite. Rob spoke to that. Ronnie said he wants to keep things on a high level. It's so easier to go down and point fingers and blame and make accusations when that doesn't always improve what we're trying to do. We have to be held accountable as a school board, 100%. And our employees that work for us at the division level have to be held accountable. But we've got to get to the point where we all are on the same page, us and you guys, as much as possible, knowing everybody has different gifts and talents, right? I'm not a business owner, so that's not my gift and talent, right? But my background in education is my gift and talent. So between what I know and what you guys know and what we all know on this board, there's no reason why we can't have a different conversation as we move forward in the next 7-8 months, right? And next year when we come back together, you know, hopefully we'll be able to do a better job presenting what you're asking for, because it won't be our first time doing it, right? But it is some of our first times doing it. And again, I learn every day. I learn from everybody sitting here, and I'm learning from my conversations with you guys too. So I just wanted you guys to hear, we are serious about making it better. And it's easy just to say that, but I mean, I feel like we mean that. And we also realize there's been problems. I'm not gonna say there's been problems in the past, but I don't wanna keep talking about top heaviness and those problems. I wanna assure you that we're gonna stop making those problems, and we're not gonna have to have a penalty contingency fund, because we're not gonna get penalties. That's the way I work. Why do I wanna have I don't wanna pay penalties. I don't think any of us wanna pay penalties. It's kinda like not paying your personal property taxes on time, right? Or not paying your state tax. There are penalties to that. Well, I don't make enough money to pay those penalties. I don't wanna throw my money I do make away, right? I'm on a pension. So, like, I wanna be responsible with all the money you guys and all the taxpayers give us. And the only way we're gonna do that is we get into the weeds of this budget and understand it. But it takes a while. Like I said, I never had to be this deep in the budget, even at the COO level. I had my budget for my operational side of the budget. That was it. I didn't know what everybody else did. I just wanted to make sure I was running my ship right. But, you know, maybe that was a problem. Maybe I should have gotten deeper. But I clearly heard what you guys said back then. I was in those meetings. So I know what you're talking about. So I just want you to know that I believe we're going to do everything we can to get better. But and I'm not asking for 4 years. I'm asking for just a little bit of grace as we grow.
Good evening to everyone.
Evening. Yep.
Right up here.
Right up, okay. In regards to the budget, yes, I understand that there's definitely some things that we could have done better. But of course, I feel like time played a critical part for us because we were working very late with the budget. Definitely a lot of the line items that we should have added that wasn't added, I respect that. But again, I feel like it's all because of the timing. As far as the penalty line, as Butch said, we should have it, but then again, we don't wanna rely on that because it's not our goal to be penalized. So nobody wants to be penalized. However, with Magruder indicating penalties, you know, yes, we have occurred, well, we will eventually probably, but that's gonna go back to, will we be held accountable as far as the school board for those penalties, or will that be a joint effort because of the centralization that we have taken?
Well, just to speak to that point, I mean, yes, any penalties, you know, they will incur, especially moving forward, will be on the school board because we've issued a separate account for the schools at this point. So you're gonna have a bucket. If that bucket runs dry, it's dry, unless you come back to us and this board decides to pay for that. So that's, what's happened in the past is it's all been shared out of one account. So if there was penalties paid, it was automatically drawn out of our account, whether the schools had any money in its bucket or not. But that won't happen moving forward. We made that decision back in September of last year. So anything that we've seen so far has been from, yeah, really, I know we'll have centralized services, a brief discussion on that, but yeah, that ship is kind of moving on now at this point. You know, that's getting transitioned back. Yeah, if there's issues that we thought were a result of something that we were responsible for, we'll take ownership and take responsibility for those things. There's no doubt about that. I'm willing to say if I'm wrong about something. I try not to be, and I try not to speak if I think I am, but these penalties that we're seeing right now are not a result of anything of that. These are previous to centralized services, prior to the county taking on the finances. So all of these penalties up to this point, because these are back from still last year, these penalties that we're getting that we'll end up talking about tonight are from prior to that still. And we're just, the IRS is just getting around to assessing some of these penalties at this point.
You all had mentioned earlier that you have approved a capital improvement plan. It wasn't included. Did I miss it? I didn't see it in the package material. What was the total amount of your capital improvement plan for this year?
I thought it was,
Sorry, that went all the way back to 2024, we just started looking at capital improvement plan, we have to look at it.
Please send that to us tomorrow.
Yes. Actually, could you forward that then,
sure.
you got it pulled out? Okay.
Yeah, so
You
this
wanna-
is,
You wanna speak to it? We've got the mic.
yeah, this is not the most current one. As I'm looking at these costs, it's not this is not the most current one. I thought we, no. Hang on a second.
But you say
Hang
you
on,
approved
hang
it
on.
at your last meeting. Is that what you said? So I guess we could go back to those minutes or something to find out.
Yeah, we could send it to you.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a number. Do you have a
We're
rough guess?
still trying to get it pulled up.
Okay, here you go.
You got it?
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Okay, so FY '26, so again, just to give you sort of the breakdown of it, we did FY '26, '27, '28, '29, '30. We had large makeup air RTU replacements for JCIS under FY '26, solar ready roofing upgrades. FY '26 replaced school buses, 2 buses. We have 2 buses each year, 155 K per bus, times 2 buses. FY '26, then in FY '27, we had indoor air quality assessment at 110,000, 2 more buses and another 310.
I don't want to interrupt. We'll get to the details when you send it.
Yeah.
I just want a
So,
bottom number for discussion here for a second.
2.853,
For this
2.853.
fiscal year,
Yes, sir.
2.8?
Yes.
2.8 million,
Mhm.
okay.
Goes down
Then it goes
to about $1 million next year, $1.3 million the next, 490.
490,
That-
and
That's
then
fine.
1.9.
I'm dealing just with this year, because that's what we're talking about is this year, okay?
2.8.
That's 2.8 more million. Now, I can't remember how many years ago, but several years ago, with a discussion with that school board, that they would initiate some efficiencies and cost savings that they would come back to the county with. Half of that money would go into a special capital improvement fund. I know we have a little bit of money in there. I want to say it's around 160,000 maybe at the most, something like that, to dip to. So looking for those cost savings to add to that to help meet this $2.8 million request that you're making. Do you all have it on your work schedule to sit down to look at that, to see what, again, efficiencies, what savings that you can put back into a capital improvement plan? Because you have to be careful about what is referred to death by 1,000 cuts. 2.8 million here, 1.6 there, 1.5 for the energy efficiency stuff. Do you all see, folks, the numbers adding up here? We're not talking little bits of money here, okay? Just to meet what is a 1 cent tax increase to the taxpayers in this county
About 140,000.
was 140,000. You're talking 40 cents increase in tax rate just to meet what you're requesting or what you need here. I need some help here, folks, okay? I need some big-time help here. I am more than willing to. When we ask our departments to find efficiencies and stuff, they dig deep. We start, you know, we have we look at our transportation, what it costs for vehicles, the insurances for that. We question, do we need all these vehicles? Do we need this? Can we do something more efficiently to save? And if they come and save $1,000, I will guarantee I will do a shout out here at our monthly meeting. It drives these guys nuts, but I'm sorry, every little bit helps. These people dig deep so that when they come to us and say, hey, I really need this technology or I need this vehicle, whatever, it's a whole lot easier for me to say because, yeah, they've been busting their chops up to that point. So you guys, do you have a plan to sit and talk about some of these to add to this capital improvement plan?
I have proposed some suggestions. One and primarily was, do we need to purchase buses or do we need to lease buses?
Sure.
You know, what that efficiency would look like, because, you know, ever so many years you can, you know, swap out the lease or whatever, however they do the lease. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But looking at lease versus purchase.
Sure.
And then consolidation of some things. So that was one of the things that I mentioned
And
as
do you
well.
know who has the best answers to efficiency and savings? It's your employees, not us up here. I asked the department heads, they talk to
So-
their employees. They're the ones that can tell you how to. Maybe it's in purchasing, maybe it's in transportation, maybe it's in technology. So, I just want you guys to start thinking about this and how it's gonna meet these goals. Because I'm really having a hard time. I'd love to be able to just write the check and be done, but how am I gonna do that with all those other expenses that I have just mentioned? It's huge, folks, huge.
So just all I was going to add to that is we do look forward to having those conversations and being able to include our new finance people that we're bringing on board to be a part of those discussions. We think that he will bring some value to that, to assisting us with doing just what you said, looking for ways and opportunities to find savings and efficiencies. So we look forward to doing just that. I got some quotes on lease buses just yesterday, leasing buses versus purchasing them just yesterday. So there are some things that we are doing, but we definitely look forward to doing more of that with our new team coming on board.
So one other thing, a lot of the items on the capital improvement plan are from McClure. So it's a It's an overlap.
So it's 2.5 million that they're saying we can do next year as we start, right? So,
Okay.
I
Fair
want
enough.
to make sure we said that.
Fair
So
enough.
And there's savings with that too, that we just don't
there
have
will
those
be.
numbers.
It's
That's
gonna
fine.
take a while, right? So
It's a
gonna
20-year
come back over
savings.
time. Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
So there's some overlap there.
Valid point, and I'm glad to hear
But
that.
every 5 years, there's something like a big project, like, you know, the air RT or the solar panel installation. So, and then we'll have 4 years where it will be, you know, smaller scale things, and then we'll have another one as we cycle back into it, right? Based on what they've shared with us and what we've kind of looked at facility-wise. But the elephant in the room is there are definitely efficiencies to include, you know, looking at our schools. We gotta look at our schools. I mean, that is not going away, okay? And it's not, tonight's not the forum for that.
No, it's not.
I
Totally
promise
not.
you
Totally
that
not.
As a board, we understand the importance of doing that. And as soon as we get things back where it needs to go and start flowing that way, our focus will be on how can we streamline the operational things so we're not putting money out unnecessarily. So, because we all know we're not going to go back. Well, and Cooper is great with telling us how many kids are born in Essex, right? How many kids are born in Virginia? We know where we're going to be. It's never going to be 1,400 kids. It's not happening. So we have to be very cognizant of that as a school division, as a county. And so that's something we have also talked about. That's another discussion we want to have. But right now, we're kind of turning from a fire hydrant on this stuff. As soon as we can get our breath on that, we'll start looking at the next levels. And there's definitely some efficiencies there. We know that, you know that, we all know that. The work was done previously.
Thank you for saying that.
We just have to figure out how to make it go forward, right? So,
Yeah, and I want to, and Calvin and Joe, I don't know if you have any additional comments, but I think, this is some of the things that we can kind of work out as we get together a small group, iron out some of these questions and concerns and things that we can iron out a little bit better. So, we've been an hour on this budget. We still have a few other items that I don't want to be here for 4 hours tonight.
Chairman,
Would be my goal.
I have one comment just to correct the record to Supervisor Magruder's point. The McClure Energy efficiencies studies that were adopted and approved by the school board, you've referenced them, but they have not been brought before this board, and that's roughly 1.69 million. So that will need to come before the board at some point, but it has not been here yet.
Well, that speaks to the policies and procedures, the budget action forms that we live by. We have to count every dime that goes through the county coffers. So we've got to have that information brought to us in that structure.
there's no excuse for that.
Calvin, Joe, did you have anything additional to add before we move to the next item?
I got a disclaimer, I'm not a data cruncher. But I do have a suggestion. Dr. Jones and the school board, like when you do your budget, if you put like a number in certain items, like certain areas, like if, say, for instance, we'll say teachers' salary. When you put the budget out there, you see a big number at the end. Now you get everybody looking at it like, man, that's a lot of money. But if you put, for instance, it's 10 teachers that's getting this money, then your justification is easy. You see what I'm saying? It's done.
Add the numbers of teachers
Right.
that salary is covering.
Right, and it what it covers. Even though some teachers may get a little bit more than others, it still gives an average and it makes more sense. You don't get those questions. And the one question I gotta ask of you, can somebody tell me how many students that we have from Essex County go to the Northern Neck Technical Center?
Not enough.
That ain't a good answer.
Well, I'm gonna tell you historically, because I was the director there for 4 years, right?
Okay.
I can speak to this. So during my tenure, every time the buses rolled through that parking lot in the morning and in the afternoon, I would get my feelings about the fact that ECPS had not even one full bus in the morning. And
Well-
Westmoreland had kids hanging out the windows, and so did Richmond County. So one of my focuses was recruiting intentionally at Essex High School, to the point where as a director, I went and recruited. I did the recruiting. I didn't let my staff do it, right? And even when I did that, it was very challenging to get those children to come across that bridge and go to that tech center. And this is subjective. This is not a data point. You said you're not a data guy, but I'm speaking in broad strokes when I say this. A lot of it is kids don't want to give up half their day, their junior and senior year, to be out of their building. Okay? If they like where they are, they enjoy their peer groups. This is what I've got from kids. They'll fill out the applications, and we go to admit them, and I get feedback from the counselor. They decide they didn't want to come. Well, why is that? Well, they said they didn't want to be over there for half their day as a junior and half their day as a senior. And to me, that's something that has to be done in that school, right? That's the stuff we have to do when they're in middle school, get them over to visit, show them what it's like. Then we need to have we change the recruiting practices there. So that then, not just principal and AP and career director recruiting kids, let's get kids from Essex recruiting kids from Essex, right? And we saw a little uptick, but it's still not where it needs to be. There's no reason why we're not packing a bus in the morning and almost packing it in the afternoon. Because first year goes in the morning, second year goes in the afternoon. That's the way it's been for years. So it's definitely something, Joe, great question. I'm passionate about it, but I can't get those kids to get into those programs. That's got to happen at that school level. You got to have the right leadership at the school and the right school counselors at the school to get that culture, so the kids want to go there and get that trade. Because it's very
We have
important.
35 right now scheduled to go next
35.
year. To go next year.
35, okay. We spent $388,000 a year on 35 kids to go across the bridge. Why can't we take that $388,000, put it back in our school system, and bring the vocation here? Open up to more. Then you can ask your own question, Butch. They don't have to get on the bus. They can walk out the building, walk into the other building, and go in there and stay in their school. Stay in there, they stay in their environment all day, like we did it for 2 periods. I mean, that's something to think about. You're saving some money to yourself, but you can still hire some personnel to teach those classes.
Sure.
It's something to think about. Just talk about the kids, okay? That's what we're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
it certainly is. We've had some really informal kinds of conversations around that idea of bringing some CTE programs to our school that are not at the Northern Neck Tech Center. So that's some conversations that we had started last year when we were talking about the whole consolidating them schools and that sort of thing. 50 slots, but 35 kids right now. But yes, if there are programs that are not at the Northern Neck Tech Center that we could possibly at some point bring to our one of our buildings, keeping them in-house is always best if we could do it if it's appropriate.
But I'm willing to bet you can fill that building up if you just put the right class out there.
I'm willing to bet it's going to cost you about $800,000 to hire staff and get the equipment.
I don't think it will.
Well, we did that. I can get those numbers to you.
Okay.
I can get those numbers to you. Those numbers are readily available to that.
But would you rather spend $800,000 one time and then gain more? Because how you know that you can't get some other counties to send their kids to this program
Because we're
when
not
you
a-
can make some
We're
money?
not a regional program. It sounds great, but we're not, we're not, that's why there's a regional program. So there's definitely things we could talk about.
Yeah,
And
okay,
I'd love to get you involved in that if you feel
Okay.
passionate about it.
okay,
You could be a great supporter on that if you want to, because
okay.
we need that kind of support. We need that kind of passion. And I have it too. I just know how expensive the equipment is at the tech center. That's why that money is $355,000 to send those kids over. But there's no reason why we can't send a full bus in the mornings. We gotta recruit them and get them over there.
Okay.
Yep, good.
Can I go into that 800,000, Butch? You're talking about buying equipment. That's not a one-year expense.
No.
800,000 could be spent out over 10 years, which makes it look much more appealing. To get
That's
kids
the
to stay
start.
there.
That's just the start. That's what I'm saying. That's the start.
Worth a try, though.
But you're
Well,
spending
I mean,
three,
I think it is. I think it is.
but you're spending 380 over 10 years, you're spending 380 every year, you're looking at $4 million.
100%. 100%.
My other question, I know the McClure Group has done a lot of work, but I haven't heard anybody mention anything about the elementary school. That school is in dire need of repair. So is all of that factored in to get that building up to standard? And how much is that gonna cost?
It is mentioned in the, CIP. So, Mr. McGrew said he wanted to talk about this year, but that is kind of projected out over, 28, and 30. So the projections are, 2.2 million over the next 5 years to do what you just asked. That's the projections, of course, you know how that goes, right? Everything goes up every single day it goes by. We really want to talk about another plan, right? So, that's what we need, that's the work we need to do. So,
All right, well, Poltergeist was telling us, I think we were ready to get off the
Mr. Akers,
26, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, can I answer Mr. Henry's
Sure.
question? So the instructional team presented to us about some ideas to create some of those vocational options for our Essex students. So there were some plans, are some plans to expand those opportunities for in-house to increase the academic stamina of our students, so that if they go to the VOCAC Center, they'll feel a bit more comfortable, prepared, or things of that nature if they have some hesitation or reservation. So there were some plans from our instructional team to build those things in-house in the event that our students don't want to go to the Northern Technical Center. So those conversations were had, and I was in 8th grade when we had our own vocational program, and the justification back then when I was in 8th grade, so I graduated in 92, was that it was a cost savings that you're pulling your students and programs out. I have been an advocate for bringing more services back to our students, so I did send a course selection sheet previously that looks at what potential vocational programs could be offered that may not be offered at the Northern Technical Center, and the course selection, the course progression that allows for those courses to be offered. So I have that information readily available if anyone wants to see that, but that is some things that were in the works. Where we are with that right now, I'm not 100% certain, but there were those conversations, which is one of them is the nursing pathway, to build the capacity of our students here, just in case they don't want to go to the technical center.
Thank you. All right, our next agenda item is the 25-26 budget, which is quickly approaching the close, and so I've asked Dina to put together some information and kind of go over her analysis of where we may be, kind of worst case scenario, what's the best case scenario, and what needs to happen to take us from worst case to best case, because that's really what we need to focus on with this little bit of time that we have left. So Nita, I'll turn that over to you, please.
So yesterday, I took where we are as of May 30th with this year's current budget, and then I just did a guesstimation based on the last few payrolls that we've done for the 2 upcoming payrolls that will need to be done. I realize there's a little savings with the 10 and 11-month employees that we don't make contributions for VRS in those months, but the long of the short is, my projection is at about $2.3 million for 2 more payrolls, and then added that to where we are with our actuals. I looked at some of the revenues that are still to come in since the state spreads it out over the course of the year. My largest concern was with special ed and the IDEA 611 and 619 money that we just got the plan approved. We're ready to submit those reimbursements. However, there's a few documentations that we need after going through the audit. We definitely don't want to submit those reimbursements without everything on hand to substantiate it. So we're waiting on those. If you take all of that into account, if we did not receive those reimbursements for the IDEA, we would be approximately $750,000 over budget. Best case scenario, again, just looking at if we did receive that IDEA money, probably about $300,000-400,000. So, I mean, this doesn't take into account additional out-of-pocket expenses. It's again, just here's the budget. I know we've got payroll left to go, and I know that there's still some grant money out there or other program money that we may or may not receive. This does not take into account not knowing where we are with the IDEA audit. I followed up with VDOE auditors on Monday, I believe, maybe it was Friday. They responded and said, we're still reviewing internally. We will let you know. So I don't have an answer on that. That was one that we had, you know, maybe $180,000 that would be outstanding. I reduced the rebates, the refunds, just looking at the budget revenue for that. We're nowhere near touching those. Medicaid, we were nowhere near touching what we had projected in revenue for that as well. And then I subtracted out the all-in money that will need to be returned as well. So all of those were factors in coming up with that worst case $750,000.
So one of my concerns with that is when we met back in September, and maybe it was October, time goes by, but we had talked about having these deficits, and we talked about the need to have a remedy and a plan to address those. Dr. Jones, you were here, you presented some options. Our comment was that's not for us to determine the options. What we need is the school to execute. I know it was a partially different board at that time, but my question is, what things have been done to remedy this shortfall? Because we've been seeing this since at least September, even earlier than that. And we're worse now than what we were looking at then. And that's primarily because our expenses are exceeding our revenues. We can look at an expense sheet and a budget and say, hey, we haven't expended what we budgeted, but if your revenues aren't coming in to offset it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you budget for in expenses. So, I mean, this will be a problem.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I have is, back then in October timeframe, I guess it was or so, there was a plan that we presented to, I think, to the tune of $750,000 or somewhere around there, that was earmarked to be basically taken out of our budget so that we wouldn't even have access to it. I did ensure that our folks knew where this money was coming out of their budget. But I'm not 100% sure that those funds were ever moved. I mean, I know it was approved at the board meeting. I remember, the form was signed off on. Maybe it was 700,000. I think I said 750. Maybe it was 700. I'm not sure if those monies were really moved from those accounts as we had agreed back then. And so I'm not sure if that makes a difference in where we are now. The things that I have looked at here recently, I couldn't tell that those funds had been moved as they were supposed to have been. So I'm just not sure if that didn't happen. I don't know if that plays a part in where we are now. It shouldn't, because ideally, I shared with our team the monies that were going to be pulled from their budgets at some point so that they would not use those funds. Over time, again, I'm not sure if those funds were moved. I'm not sure if there were some expenditures that did get spent if those monies were moved that shouldn't have been spent. I'm just not sure about that, and I don't know if that's an answer that someone has, if those funds were or were not.
Whether expense item was adjusted or moved makes no difference if you don't have the revenues coming in. Expenditures are under. Ultimately, the expenditures are under what you budgeted. The problem is there's not enough revenue. Don't care about the expenditures, because I can't look at your budget right now, and nor do I think anyone on the school board can look at that budget and tell me you understand it and know where all the expenses are coming from. Because things are miscoded, they're misappropriated. It has been for years and years and years, not a new problem. But the problem is our revenues are lower than our expenses, and maybe we'll get some windfalls in, but having to refund some of these grants and having these issues with these idea grants, if there's a number one priority tomorrow morning, whatever documentation they need to support for these idea grants, to not risk losing this $400,000 should be a number one priority. In fact, I'd go over to that school right now and open up the doors and start working on it, because that is number one priority. Because I don't know that this board has an appetite to bail you guys out this time. And going in the red will cause significant problems. We've done it once. We talked about it 6, 7, 8 months ago. I really don't feel like talking about it again. I want to help. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not pointing fingers. But these aren't new things. These are big picture items. The financial fortitude of the schools falls directly on school administration. It falls on that shoulders, and that's where it's got to lie. And we shouldn't have to call it out. Really should. So I would say, if there's things that are needed, if there's reports that need to be submitted, if it's stuff to special education, somebody's got to get their butt on the line and get it done. Because I will be highly agitated if we find out that something wasn't submitted that could have been submitted, and cost reduction of $400,000, that's going to be a big problem. A big problem. So I guess we probably need to have, it should come up, I'd like to see an update at our next Board of Supervisors meeting. A report should come up at your next school board meeting to how this is being resolved and how it's being fixed. And you guys should get that answer first to be able to say, we're on top of it, we know the board's on top of it, and we'd like to see those regular reports too. I don't have a good answer. I'm not dealing with that day to day, so I can't really help with that. but it's an issue.
One of those expenses, I think, has to be spent down before June 30th, or something of that nature. So I'm hoping that tomorrow there'll be some suggestions on how to make that adjustment to spend down that, particularly SPED money, so we don't get that penalty before June 30th.
The IDEA money has, I mean, we will have more reimbursements. Brian has already put together everything to submit it, but we don't want to submit it until we have the time and effort documentation. That's what we're missing. That's what I've requested. We need that information on hand. It's not like that goes into the submittal, but that's what we were dinged for in the audit, of not having all that proper documentation.
And that documentation should come from the Director of Special Education.
That's my understanding, because I can provide the financial part of it, but the time and effort part of what people were doing, when they were doing it. I know that some of the outside vendors that we use, I've seen on their invoices where they worked with so-and-so on this. So it should be, and there's information on the VDOE website of what needs to be contained in that time and effort reporting for those programs.
And that also pertains to Medicaid reimbursement. That documentation is used for that as well, so that will be helpful.
And I'd be curious to know, why aren't we getting the Medicaid reimbursement? Are we not billing the Medicaid stuff? Because that's a problem. That's another lost revenue stream if we're not billing for those Medicaid dollars. And I hear some of that through, I'm on the Social Services Board, and I kind of hear some of those same things. That's problematic also. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'll let my board, I didn't take enough blood pressure medicine today, and I might blow a top. So I'll let any of my other board
Well, I'll
members
just
have a
mention
comment.
yeah, you're right, the Medicaid has not been billed like it should. One of the things we're doing to remedy that is we are assigning a person to be the Medicaid coordinator. That will be her responsibility, as well as we're planning to get our nurses trained, because nurses can bill for Medicaid as well, but that has been an area of shortfall for us here recently that we are working to rectify so that we can. That's easy money, basically, if you do it. So we just need to have someone responsible for doing it. Yes.
Will those opportunities take effect, like, beginning tomorrow? Like, will they be on a mission to get these things rolled out, pushed out, so we'll know by June 15th, like, where we stand with Medicaid reimbursement? Because you can get Medicaid reimbursements for certain things, I don't know, like a vision or hearing screening or something of that nature. Case management duties, when their case managers are meeting with their caseload, do you know when we'll have could we possibly have a time frame?
So sure, we can do that. The only thing I can't give you right this moment is when we're going to have the nurses trained. But our person responsible knows that they are responsible. And so, yes, those are discussions that we'll heat back up here momentarily.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the elephant in the room, Rob, you touched on this. This has been going on for years. Like, 4 years. And so, until someone takes that bull by the horn and says, this is going to happen under my tenure, under my watch, under my direction, we're going to continue to spin tires and not get the time and effort documentation that's needed. And there are so many things that you can get reimbursed for on the Medicaid side, to include counseling, from the school counseling side, to include nursing services, to include all of the related services. I mean, that's definitely true. And I will say, a couple of years ago, we were moving and trending in the right direction, and then there was, change. And that happens. And when there's changes happen, if you don't have policy manuals or procedures in place, the next man or woman that comes into that job, then they're trying to catch up to what do I need to do as my job, right? And so, or if they're not following the things that are already there, right? So that's always kind of the question is, when you hire someone as a director level or as a senior division leader, when they interview for the job, they clearly know what is expected. That's where we have to be held accountable, is that the job, the work is getting done at a high level, to use Mr. Gillsville, right? It has to be done at a high level. And it's obvious that it's not based on what Nita just said. And it should not be a fight back and forth. It's been, you said 9 months ago, it started September, October, so it's been going on. So here we are, right? We're right in the same place. And that's the definition of insanity, is to think that we're gonna get this thing done in the next few weeks so that we're saving money and we're not asking for more money. So, that goes back to what I said earlier, right? We're finding these things out, we're trying to come up with a plan. Realistically, I don't see how that plan is gonna work in our timeframe. It should have been started back in the fall, exactly, instead of us talking about it now. We should be talking about how it improved from October, September, whenever you guys talked about it, to where we are now, and we see a decrease in the funds versus it continuing to go up.
I appreciate the comment, Butch, but the bottom line is, you know, it's not your fault, but you are the school board. There is our superintendent. It's your responsibility. That's the bottom line. So the question is, to our chair's request, is that tomorrow's priority? You guys set that. It's your prerogative. So you guys got to decide that. So do you want to take on the responsibility or you don't want to? It is your choice. But to the chairman's point, I don't think you're going to get our support if you don't take that responsibility. It's just not going to happen. We just can't continue to do the same thing the same way, to your definition, Butch, of insanity. That's insanity, okay? So, you mentioned it, or Anita mentioned the findings for the audit. Did you all take that up in your work session? The audit that was done? They did the school books. All right, silence tells me my answer. There are recommendations in here, findings and suggestions on how to improve those. So I would strongly recommend that be Monday's job, to look at those findings, because this is policy and procedure that could really help out. Documentation is one of the big things. And in all fairness, the county had a few corrections that they had to make too. But we've addressed those corrections. I strongly suggest that you all get a copy of that and check that out.
Well, it's on our website.
It's on our website, but.
It's been sent.
It's sent. Okay. Have you looked at it? Have you studied it? Okay?
So I did
None of
just,
that. Point made.
There's a
just
sense of
wanted to
urgency
mention-
here,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
as I think it's been mentioned, and it was a sense of urgency on the FY '27 budget that we started talking about in January. And we're still here, this board has still not been presented a formal school budget, and we're at the first part of June. And then we're still trying to finish out FY '26 at a pretty likely deficit, we just don't know what it is. So I think it's clear, the sense of urgency for all of us, but I think at the board, at your level, is to look at this, because it's going to be tough to overcome in less than 30 days.
Great. All right, let's move from the 25-26 budget unless the school board had anything else to add.
well, I just was gonna add just the one statement that came up, but not super significant, but the one statement that came up before regarding the spend down money and where we are with that by June 30th, especially spend down money. We have about $7,000 that we do have a plan for spending that down on our private school or related service, students who get related services. We have a staff member who is working through now to take care of that. $7,000 is left on the spend down. So that's all. Just
Would
wanna
that be
mention
the set-aside money?
Yes.
Yeah, I think what I anticipate having coming up in very short order is that the school board's gonna need to come back to us as a board and say, we're gonna be in a deficit by this amount. Would you please bail us out? We're gonna ask the questions, why, how did you get there, and how you can prevent it from going forward. The same conversation again we had 7 months ago. It can't be the same answer we got 7 months ago either. That's just not gonna work. All right. E-rate bear funding. And this will be an example that we'll kind of roll into this a little bit. And Nita, if you want to kind of just explain how that transpired, and I know I've been in communication with Jamie about it, been in communication with you, so.
I learned about E-rate.
So did I.
It appears that there are two different types of E-rate. There was one that is just for internet service. That is what was projected in the revenue under the E-rate line for the current budget of $22,500. When the expense side was put into the budget, I assume that went into the $25,000 or the utilities. I'm not sure because it just kind of got, there's not an expense line for E-rate internet, category 1. There is a E-rate category 2, which it looks like Mr. Barnes submitted an application last year for upgrade of the Wi-Fi access points in the school. So category 2 is a hardware account. And that does require, it's not really a county match, it is here is an amount. E-rate will pay 85% reimbursed, and the county will pay that other 15% reimbursed. So on the tech line that Mr. Barnes identified, there was $25,000 appropriated. It appears that he sent an email prior to me joining the county to finance saying, we got approved, it came in a little bit less, but it's this much money, which would also reduce the county portion as well. And nobody requested an appropriation for it, so therefore it fell off the radar. We received this money a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Barnes and I started talking about it, and that's how I learned about it. So the request, I believe, for appropriation at this point, even though the expense has already been incurred, is the $113,000 that the E-rate reimbursed, but that would also then reduce the county's portion, their 15% of that cost as well.
So at your next board meeting, you're gonna have to take action on that E-rate to approve that. And what you'll see on your side is you're getting the full 113 that was provided from the feds for that E-rate. And what we will have on our side, which it's already been prepared for our budget action form, will be that same work, that 113, plus a transfer back of the over budgeted amount for what the local match would be. Here again, problematically, been somewhat of a delay because this was approved back in June of 2025. And in June of 2025, that appropriation should have happened right then, and it should have been added into the budget. And not wait till we spend everything and then come back and ask for the money. And we're gonna see, if you look back in history and currently still, what we continuing problem, funds are getting spent before they get approved. And then it's a shell game saying, well, you gotta pay for it, we've already committed to it. And so, should be no problem with approving this, but the process, the procedure wasn't followed. Even if it's been done that way for years, it's not been done the right way, and it's not following your own policies and procedures, it certainly doesn't follow ours either. So, I know you guys have that at your next meeting. Board members, we'll see this at our next board meeting. I've worked with our finance team to make sure that the numbers work out the way they're supposed to based on how that comes back. So I know that you guys meet right before us, so I don't expect that you can give us an approved letter, a week before, but we've got the information in our packet now, so we'll be able to review it and we'll have that and we'll understand it. And if there's more questions, I'm confident that Nina or myself will be able to answer those at that time. So, board members, do you have any questions on that?
Just a quick comment with the fact too, that it just befuddles me to see that in the budget, the 22.5, and I'm looking at 113. I don't like that.
So
That's not logical to me.
So the issue there is that the grant was known to be going for, knew we were going for the grant, knew there was a local match that's 85%, but the only thing that was budgeted was the local match contribution and not the full thing. The full thing should have been
Got to be in
budgeted
there.
right up front, right.
It just makes things follow so much easier.
So I think currently that line is overspent by like 108,000 because the county's appropriation ended up being more than it needed to be because it cost less than what was originally planned. And so that reduces both the 85% from the federal side and the 15% from the county.
So good news, it costs less, came in cheaper, that's
That's
great
great.
things. So all positive things, and that'll be a shout out. We just needed to follow the process and policy the way it should have been aligned, so. All right, next one, and this one I'm gonna take some issue with, and if I get too red, just stop me. So bonus money. So I know this has been probably discussed at the school board level. I know Jamie and I had had this conversation about it, that the state was looking to provide some bonus money. That bonus money, didn't know the amount at the time or how much it would be, but it was known that it was gonna be a local match required by it. I know there was some communication with Dr. Jones in April talking about this and whether it should come before the board, but nothing had ever been approved by you guys. But apparently this bonus money was certified and committed to be received, and we received a check, was it Friday?
Yes, it was last
For-
week, I believe, Thursday or Friday, yeah, $110,000.
For $110,000, which requires the county $80,000 match. It should have never been certified, it should have never been submitted. It was not approved by you all, it was not approved by us. It's another example of making a commitment, writing a check that our butts can't cash. And I know I, for one on this board, am not willing to approve that. And my recommendation to our board and to our county finance is to send that check back, because I don't want to hold on to that hot money any more than we need to.
So I'll offer this, that at the time that we were in discussions about the bonus with the state finance office, the certification of whether school divisions wanted to take advantage of the bonus or not had to be done by May 1. And so what was told to us, because I asked the question that, okay, what if our board or our Board of Supervisors has not agreed to do that by that deadline? The recommendation from the state was to go ahead and certify, and when your boards do agree, it will be fine, but if your boards decide not to agree, you can decertify before June 30. The question came back to me was, are you talking about, if they do agree, would you be talking about wanting this money for FY '26 or in FY '27? And so I think April and I talked a little bit about that, and the recommendation was that if anything were going to happen, it would need to be after our budget was approved, and obviously then FY '27. But the state was recommending that we go ahead and certify, and if the answer is no, it's no. You decertify and have the money to go back, which is understandable at this point.
Well,
But that's what it was.
I think it's clear at this point, and if it's not, it should be, that if it doesn't come through your school board for approval and it gets certified, it's gonna be a guaranteed no. If the policy and process isn't being followed, you can guarantee a no with it, because that's what gets us into these positions. And it can be not a big deal to decertify it, but it should never happen. When we got these other financial issues looming over our head, the last thing we should be doing is committing to more money. So that's my only comment on that. If anybody else has any other comments to make, you're more than welcome to.
Well, the only other thing I'll add is that the goal was not to present it to you before our board approved, but I hear what you're saying, that the preference would have been that it not be certified, and I totally understand. The only reason I did is because that deadline was May 1, and when I asked the state, that's the information that they gave me. Do it in case they do approve, and then you'll be, but
But if that was the
don't send it
deadline,
back.
it should have been brought to your school board before that deadline, said, look, we've got a deadline, what's your status gonna be on that? At least get them to, I'm not saying we would have approved it even if the school board had. But the fact that the school board didn't do it and didn't approve it, there should be no actions, in my opinion, that are taken without your governing body's approval.
Yeah,
Period.
agreed.
So I have a comment to that. What we talked about was opting in or out. You asked me what the board's appetite would be, and I said, with all due respect, I believe they would not opt in without having received a budget from the school board. So just want to put that to record. It wasn't approval from the county. It was, I don't think the board is going to do it. They may give the advice, like they do other constitutional officers, that if it's existing within your budget that's already been approved, then that's up to your board to address that. And I believe I copied you on that email as well. So,
All right. Next, we have the Virginia Preschool Initiative. I know you guys had taken action on that at your last meeting. And we talked about the difference, it's got to get worked out between what's budgeted and what's in the budget action form. That's another topic that needs to happen at your next meeting to get whatever that is resolved, so it can come back before us with the substantiation of those programs, just like we talked about before. I don't think anybody here is questioning whether the VPI is important or not important. I believe it is. I believe anything they show should be important, but we got to get those discrepancies taken care of. And we did spend a little bit of time on that. School improvement grant. When we last met, we had conditionally approved the school improvement grant, and at the time, the documentation was not signed for the plan itself. I know the school board had approved the grant, but you had not approved the plan and hadn't seen the plan yet. And if I'm not mistaken, was the plan just approved at your last meeting?
Yes.
That's when the board approved the plan itself?
When we reapproved the EAF, the corrected EAF form, yes.
And I know that there was a conflict in schedule, so you couldn't meet on the 20th, which made our initial contingent approval of that mute and void. But at the same time, we found out that, hey, this school improvement grant should get split between this year's funds, like, I'm just gonna use rough numbers, $35,000 this year, $130,000 for next year. So it makes sense to kind of break that out to those two separate funds, and that's fine. What I'm gonna take exception to, though, is tonight, when we got the signed approval plan, our meeting was on May 12th, that we had that meeting. This plan document wasn't signed. What we received tonight in our packet is a document that was signed by your assistant superintendent and your superintendent for May 11th, the day before we actually had our meeting to identify why this wasn't signed. This is official VDOE document. It has to get certified and sent to the state, and that's a problem. So I would like to know why this was backdated. And it's backdated for the school board, just so you all know. This is also backdated saying that you guys approved this plan on 5/11. And you just told me you approved it. So, again, there are conditional problems with that. And that's a big one. That is, that's a false entry of records. That goes against your state code.
I have an additional question as well, because it asks for the principal's signature, and the assistant principal is who signed the document.
And the assistant principal signed because the principal was out of the country, on leave. So authorized to sign in his absence when he's not there.
And that may be acceptable.
but-
That's not what the documentation says. The documentation says it will be signed by the principal. But the bigger thing is backdating something. I mean, that is in violation, and I'll give you the code because the Commonwealth Attorney gave it to me, 18.2-472 of the Code of Virginia. And that could potentially carry a penalty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. So why was this backdated? That's a direct question. Is why was this backdated? And what was the intent for backdating?
So I'm not sure I'm getting this. So the date that we signed it was the 11th.
No, it wasn't. We met on the 12th in this same room and said, we're not going to approve this because that plan is not signed. And I've got the minutes and I've got the video where it said, no, it wasn't signed because it wasn't done yet. And that was on May 12th. So unless you've got a time machine, somehow you didn't go back and sign it after the fact.
So we didn't go back and backdate. What I suspect happened is that the one that was uploaded was not the one that was signed. Now, the assistant principal's name was not on it, but when it was brought to me to take over and get the principal's signature on it, I had already signed it. The one that was shown here, I guess that was uploaded onto your board docs, it may have been the blank one, and I didn't do that. I didn't see that. I didn't think much about that particular one being, but I didn't backdate anything, and neither did Ms. Scott.
Well, I can tell you when the question was asked, we were told right then that it wasn't signed. And certainly, 100%, the school board hadn't approved this plan on 5/11 the day before.
I hear what you're saying.
And so I don't know how you signed for them on the 11th when the school board hadn't even approved it on unless you decide to approve it without their approval and then backdate their date later. I mean, this needs some serious, this isn't for us to ask. This is for the school board to ask you. And it may go into closed session to do it, or however they want to do it. But I would get a handle on this immediately.
There were-
But given where this is at right now,
I remember watching it from home. I was watching it, and I feel like, I could be wrong, I don't know if Ms. Gross said it wasn't finalized. There were things that had to be finalized by June,
June 20, I don't.
June 30th.
There was a
June
date.
1st.
I know there was a date, but I know it was in June.
I'm looking at my
Because I
notes,
was
June
sitting there
30th, write it
watching
down.
I was watching it on my iPad. So that's, like I said, it definitely, this should not be the way it is because of exactly what you just pointed out.
Well, I can tell you right now, me on the board, and I feel like my board members would be the same way. I am certainly not gonna approve this now, but I've got a document that's been backdated, and that's basically a false record as far as I'm concerned. So until this information gets straight, and that's not just having another meeting and saying, oh, let's fix the date on it. This is a problem.
Then there was a stakeholder engagement part of that process. And I don't know if you all have pulled in stakeholder engagement. I know there was some stakeholder engagement within the school, but a component of that is public stakeholder engagement. And
Ms.
have you
Gross,
all done that as part of this approval? I mean, that was supposed to be done before this approval as well. So that's what the grant said. As simple as that.
and Ms. Gross and Ms. Scott did take the lead on getting the stakeholder engagement, yes.
Publicly,
Who
I'm
was
talking
all
about.
That didn't
involved?
happen
I
on,
don't-
that didn't
I don't
happen
know.
on May 12th.
That's right.
And that I don't know. I
So
know they
I-
were taking the lead on that, but who was involved, the date it happened, no, I don't have that information.
All right, we'll move off of that.
Well,
And
the problem is there's signatures that says that we do have that information. That's the problem. On the 11th, we certified that everything was done according to the way it was supposed to be.
And I promise you, you guys don't have any meeting minutes that say that you approved that plan
Because
on
we
May
did not.
11th.
We didn't, because we did not.
So the paper trail is gonna go back. It's gonna come back. You can't hide the data. This was submitted to us, and it's in your packet as well. I mean, that is a problem. Centralized Services will make this quick. I've talked to Ms. Gomes. I know your all's attorney has sent the termination agreement over to our attorney to review. There's been some red line changes. Didn't want to necessarily present that to the whole board yet. She and I are going to get together with our administrators and with the legal counsel to iron out any questions there might be so we can present that back and get it here in a timely manner so we can get this thing transferred as we all desired to do on June 30th. So we'll try to do that in short order and meet with both attorneys and get something set up for that. And with that, for our board members, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This Board of Supervisors meeting is adjourned. Yeah. And you guys will need to adjourn as well if you plan on adjourning.